Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a few numbers here, and then I'm going to ask the lads to explain what's behind these numbers in terms of their respective counties. So the first set of numbers I'm going to put up are ones that we might be familiar with, but they're senior to All-Ireland titles, and what we have is the last 100 years. So not alone are they the existing All-Ireland senior champions, but you have Kilkenny and Kerry that are topping the roll of honour for this period. Now this is the period basically since it's gone 15 aside, more or less, and it's become representative. So it's not surprising, you know, most of us know this. But what's interesting about both of these counties is that it's sustained success. So if you break that 100 years down into 25-year periods, quarter of a century, and you take, for example, the football, every single one of those quarter of a centuries, you have Kerry on top. So it's sustained success. Now, Kilkenny do 3 of the 4, and you can see, you know, Cork and Tip come to the fore in the 1940 to 54 bracket. But you're talking 7 of the 8 25-year blocks, Kerry and Kilkenny are on top. And the question is, what do they do? What's the structures behind there? What's the organisation? And the lads are going to take you through some of this now.
Yeah, thanks, John. And look, lads, first thing I'd like to say is we're very conscious that people might come here today and say, oh, Kilkenny and Kerry, and it's only one cold county. And that's fair enough, and that's a valid point. But what I'm going to ask you to do is challenge yourself today to see, is there something in the next 40 minutes that you can take home to improve what you're at within your own setup? So it's very important that you have an open mind over the next few minutes. I personally believe myself we were sabotaged by the Cork man because we didn't come up with the title Special Ks. We just tip away doing our own thing year in and year out. So basically what we're going to do for the next few minutes is we're going to look at actually what is happening within our counties. There'll be no noise, there'll be no magic, it's basically what is happening within the ground. So we sat down, we met a couple of times, there's 4 commonalities. The first one there, games programme. Okay? And rather than looking at your own county as a games programme, I think you should look at it for every time that you go into your GA pitch for the coming season, it's an opportunity to learn, to play and to develop. Okay? Ultimately, we're not going to say winning is a dirty word, but your goal has to be to get either a child player or a youth player in a better place to start their season in 2016. And after the time we have players who are going through their process, we don't see any improvement. And we as coaches have to change that. From a Go Games perspective, getting the kids out to play. And in around 2005 and 2006, when the GA came up with the Go Games policy, we took it on board, we looked at what was happening, we arranged it like it's happening all over the country. And one day when we had a set of Go Games going ahead, primary school kids, 3rd and 4th class, I stood back and I just looked. And kids were just playing the game. They were going to win the game. They didn't have to wear the club jersey. They didn't have to be win the county jersey. So at that age, we want kids to love playing the sport, whether it be Gaelic football or hurling. In our primary schools, we're very fortunate. We have people who are massively dedicated. They're there year in and year out, irrespective of whether they're going to win a school's championship. But they promote the game and make sure those kids are ready for later on. Okay, you're the youth coaches. There's 700, 800 youth coaches. The post-primary school sector, the squads, the under 14, under 16 and minor matches. It has to work in tandem, it has to work together. And what I challenge you to say, if you feel you're not getting enough games for your team, why don't you network this morning with somebody from a different county and go and do something about it? Finally then, our ultimate goal is to get players through to the adult level, to play for their clubs. We're set up in Kilkenny, we have 41 clubs, we have 36. So we have 12 at senior level, 12 at intermediate level, and 12 at junior level. And what I'd say for each of those clubs, the goal at the beginning of the season is to win the championship. But ultimately the way it's set up also is the goal is also to avoid relegation to the next grade. And because Kilkenny is a small county, there has been success for every single club in the county. In the last 50 years in Kilkenny, 16 clubs have won the senior championship, 20 clubs have won the intermediate championship, and over 25 clubs have won the junior championship. So they have tasted success at a certain level. Micheál, how would that compare to Kerry?
Yeah, well, just in terms of the club set up and the game structure in Kerry, we'd have a county league system which is fantastic. I suppose we've got 5 divisions where you've 3 clubs, three clubs go up and 3 clubs go down every year, so there's no real coasting. Every game is a meaningful game. There's real worth in playing those games. In terms of our junior intermediate stuff, all those championships in Kerry are hugely competitive again. This year, at junior, intermediate and senior level, all clubs in Kerry are the Munster champions at their own grade. So the level that they're playing at, the level of, I suppose, meaningfulness that they're playing at in their own county is at a really high level, and there is no kind of, games that are just to coast by and to get through. So in terms of providing games and providing appropriate games for the level we're talking about, we're fairly well set. And the final thing would be just in terms of the senior stuff, the divisional competition. So, I always say that in maybe St. Stephen's Day every year outside in North Kerry, all the Kerry people know, there'll be a huge crowd go out to North Kerry for the North Kerry final, where it's maybe more like mud wrestling than Gaelic football, but there'll be a couple of thousand people there watching, and there's huge interest in all the divisional championships as well. So you have your county leagues, your championships, your club championships, and then your divisional championships as well. And we know that's not unique to just Kerry and Kilkenny, but from what we're talking about, that's very important.
Okay, the next aspect then are clubs and schools. And again, as I said, people would say, hunky-dory in Kilkenny, but over the last couple of years, we have met clubs and spoke to each club within the county, and clubs in Kilkenny have the exact same issues that you're facing in your club. Immigration, trying to get good coaching structures in place, trying to retain numbers. So those clubs, year in and year out, work diligently, right? And when you think about it, if it was winning championships, a lot of clubs in Kilkenny wouldn't be still here. But they're here because they love doing what they're doing, and it's a way of life for them. Looking then at the primary school set up, in 1939, Tom Waldron looked around Kilkenny and saw there was nothing happening at primary school level. So what did he do? He arranged a meeting in Kilkenny City to set up a primary schools competition. When the meeting took place, nobody turned up. Did Tom give it up? No. Himself and 2 buddies went about. They got 8 schools in 1939, 1940 to form a primary schools competition. And from that little seed, we now have a situation within the county where every primary school is parish-based, plays in Cumann and Muscle competition. Urban, we'll talk about urban in a minute, but rurally, with our small parishes, in the last couple of years, focus has had to change from winning championships to actually fielding teams. So from winning championships to fielding teams. And in fairness to the county board and the administrators within the county, they looked at that and they set up 11-a-side competitions to cater for the clubs, because we wanted to sustain our clubs. The next one there, John. And again, within the city ourselves, we have 3 dominant, very strong city clubs who have bought into Go games, who at under 14, under 16 and minor level will put in multiple teams. And they're not doing it to win a senior championship for the village or the borough of Loughlin's. That's the ultimate goal eventually. But they realise they want to spread the net as wide as they possibly can. So they do get the golden nugget eventually.
And just in case people get confused with the geography, obviously Tralee and Killarney aren't being taken by Kilkenny, but we're fortunate, obviously. It's not that we've done anything in coaching and games level, but we're fortunate for the population sizes that we have, that we're really well served with the number of clubs that are servicing that population. Now, we're conscious, obviously, there's other places in the country where they would have equal number of population, which are maybe only serviced by 1 club. So in terms of the fact that we have 7 clubs there for over 35,000, that just means that we're giving an opportunity to a lot of kids. And again, that's not something that we've done, that's just we've been fortunate that that's our setup in terms of the population numbers of the urban centres in Kerry and Kilkenny, yeah.
And I mean, that point carries on. If you look at the next slide, we'll just order counties from top to bottom in terms of the population per club, and you see Kilkenny and Kerry aren't a million miles apart in around 2,000 individuals. And that's not saying all 2,000 are involved with the club, but it's just saying that that's a rough approximation. It's a bigger issue to deal with the urban ones, but you're fortunate in the way you've done it. So we're going to take the games development structure then.
And I suppose this is where we kind of get into a little bit more of the body of it. In Kerry, so we've a pretty solid coaching structure where we've got a GDA, a games development administrator, now in 100% of the national schools. Now, we don't expect that 100% of the national school children are going to play our games, but we're trying to develop more than anything else, just trying to develop a bit of a graw for the game in them. If they never play, if we can get them involved in the club in some capacity, but we're hitting every national school in Kerry either weekly or bi-weekly. So we're getting in there doing, fundamental skill stuff, basic skill movement, games, all that kind of stuff. And every week or every 2 weeks, every child in Kerry at primary school level is getting coaching. The main function of the GDAs is really as to act as a conduit for the clubs, because the club people obviously in Kerry are doing ridiculous amount of work with the kids that they're dealing with and with the adults they're dealing with. We just ran a course just before Christmas, an award-won adult course where we had 80-something people showed up for the course for maybe 6 nights and a Saturday and stuff. So there's a huge appetite now. Obviously, when you win in All Ireland, the tide comes in, all boats rise. We had a lot more people wanting to get involved, but numbers of clubs and the appetite of club people to get involved is obviously, as we can see here today, is huge as well. Development squads were a really hot topic in Kerry there a couple of years ago, when we were getting lambasted because we weren't producing, big, huge animals who could run, 100 meters in 5 seconds and jump over tall buildings and all kind of crazy stuff. So we really reevaluated the kind of development squad structure, because we were coming under real pressure about the physicality of the game, and how our players that we were producing out of development squads weren't as physically imposing as these superhuman people. And the boys were laughing at me. I'm some, it's probably not a good idea talking about size and stuff, but in terms of our squads, we'd have a real emphasis on regular fishing with a wide net. And what that means is that it's not a closed shop. So if you miss out on a squad at under 14 level, it's an open door basically. So every year, and even during years, we're looking to take in whatever kids are improving, because we're very conscious of every child has a different developmental rate, whether it's physically or emotionally, and it's never a closed shop. So if you're talking about a kid coming in at 14 and in 4 years' time he's going to play Kerry minor and nobody else is going to be involved, then you're not going to win a whole pile. Okay, so it's really about keeping that net as wide as we can. Strength and conditioning is the real buzz thing at the moment, and again we were talking about guys eating 5 chicken breasts and 12 eggs and a protein shake for breakfast, and then going into primary school 3rd class and doing math for an hour. So we did, thankfully, Donald Daly, the games manager, and all the people below in Kerry, we didn't really buy into that kind of stuff, and we kept it as a more of a body weight exercise thing. So we're preparing their body for loaded weights when they get a little bit older, when they can actually cope with it. So the whole idea was behind injury prevention and core and flexibility. And it was really not about getting bigger faster. It was about preparing their body to take load as they get a little bit older. Bilateral coordination and skill set. So again, all the usual stuff. Being able to move off both feet, catch, hands pass off both hands, legs, all that kind of stuff. And acceptance of sampling. And this is when we were meeting about this. Pat Daly was a little bit touch and go about me talking about sampling. And what I'd say is, from a Kerry point of view, sampling is the coaching science or sports science called sampling, where children go and sample different sports. So they go play hurling, they go play football, they play handball, they play basketball, they might play a little soccer, they might play a little bit of rugby. I'm not saying, and I'd be very, very strict, I'm not saying we encourage that, but I'm saying we have an acceptance to it, so that if we have kids in our squads in Kerry, we have no problem if they're playing other sports for a little bit. As they get older and it narrows up the top, then those sports are actually, we're hoping will fall away and that we're the number one. But we don't put a blanket ban on other sports, because what science tells us is that sampling, children who sample in other sports actually develop better musculoskeletal systems, better hand-eye coordination, all the stuff that we want as adult senior footballers or hurlers, that it actually benefits us if we're doing that from a child point of view. And the last one, games-based coaching is the other thing that's really the new kind of buzzword. And again, without trying to be smart, we're probably doing game-based coaching since the dawn of time in Kerry. And people go up to Nolan Park and they went to watch Kilkenny train. I went up a couple of years ago. A buddy of mine, we drove up and watched the training, and they were playing a game for about an hour and a half. Cody never blew the whistle once. They're saying, what's happening here? And it's no secret that it's about playing the game. So training is about playing the game. It's not standing behind cones where we're kicking the ball in a straight line, we're following guys. There's no decisions to be made there. So we want to improve guys' game decision making, and that comes from games-based training, from condition games, from getting them playing the game similar to what they're going to face in an actual competitive situation. So drills, there's a shift obviously away from cones and drills towards more of the games-based stuff. Okay, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, look, there's no point in changing the issue here. Tradition. How do you quantify it? It's immeasurable. I can only talk about my experience. I remember as a 4-year-old kid, our club were county champions, and Nicky R from Johnstown captained Kilkenny to win the All-Ireland Championship. And I remember my father was from Galway. He took me, put me on his shoulders, and he brought me down to the square in Johnstown, where I can vividly remember, and I just said 4, the bonfire, the lorry, and this trophy. Now, that has been replicated at Kilkenny so often. So it does have a massive impact on young kids. It does give them a pathway to ultimate success. You know, if you're a strong hunter at Kilkenny, the chances are, you know, success is going to be at the highest level. But over Christmas, I don't have a very exciting lifestyle at the minute, I bought the Iron Zone magazine. And Henry Shefflin had a great article. And Henry said in the article, I think these are his words, he said, look, he dreamt of playing with Kilkenny, but his first dream was playing with Ballyhale, and his next dream was because his brother Tommy won a college All-Ireland with St. Kieran's College, was playing in Kieran's College, and eventually it led to where it led to. But you know, there were small building blocks along the way. And you know, if the primary school structure wasn't there, if the post-primary school structure wasn't there, if the clubs weren't doing their job, we wouldn't have the hurlers at the end of the day. So everybody in Kilkenny is fortunate because we can all feel part of it. If we take the under-14 team down and we get one player that to go into the squads, we as coaches feel proud about it. Micheál?
Yeah, and just a very quick little one. And tradition is something, obviously, it's harder to generate without success, is the point. But we can all do stuff, and we're not going to delve into now, but you know, some of the other talkers today will give you stuff that you can create that bit of a culture within your own club, whether it's 14s or 16s. Obviously not the same as, you know, when the Sam Maguire, Lee McCarthy comes around to the schools, that leaves lasting memories with people. But you can create that stuff by with your own teams having, you know, a player leadership group for an under 14 team, and you're given responsibility to 4 or 5 people. It's about giving the players as much ownership and control of the whole thing while still having a kind of guiding hand as a coach or whatever. The little bit just on tradition, I have two very quick little anecdotes just in terms of, you know, I've twin boys. My wife's, I just met my wife's uncle actually here, so I better be careful what I say, but we twin boys about 4 years ago, and you know, they were wild. They came early, they were a little while getting home, so they were about 4 weeks before we got him home. We got him home, we got in the door, exhausted, you know, scared, what's going to happen here? Knock on the door within about 40 minutes of us arriving home. Lady arrived at the door with two pairs of football boots, size 5 football boots with their names on them and a club jersey. We weren't home 1 hour. The children were 4 weeks old. I said, thanks very much, it's great, we're a bit tired, you know, it's great, yeah, lovely. And we went. 2 minutes later, I know where the light, her car wasn't gone out of the drive and there was a knock on the door. A great buddy of mine, he arrived with 2 picture frames. And I'm not a betting guy. Inside the 2 picture frames were 2 betting slips. And the 2 betting slips said, I won't tell you the amount of money, bet that Cameron Quirke will win an All-Ireland Senior Football Championship medal with Kerry. Ethan Quirke will win an All-Ireland Senior Football Championship with Kerry. They were 4 weeks old. Put them up on your wall, he says. The frightening, and it's a true story, this is a true story. The frightening thing was the odds that the bookmaker gave on Mike Quirke's children to be an All-Ireland football champion. I asked the 2 lads last night, what would you say? Now they were probably being nice. They said, 50 to 1. Paddy Power, in his wisdom, gave 10 to 1 on my 2 kids winning All-Ireland.
Now, hold up a second.
I said to the 2, I said, it's not the Gooch's kids. I said, it's the Hall Quirke's kids. Either way, it was 10 to 1. But that's the tradition in Kerry. They're afraid of us even at 4 weeks of age.
Actually, that's a bit unfair now because actually those bets were based on his wife's footballing talent.
Come on, it's not a comedy show.
So, do you want to give us the bit about Mr. Fitzmaurice?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Fitzy, the medal presentation, the Kerry medal presentation was on just before Christmas. And Eamon, who's a very good speaker, I don't know if you've heard him speak, Jack O'Connor spoke, the minor manager, and Eamon spoke after he was the final speaker, and he just said, you know, he had a lot of the minor team that won the All-Ireland in the public school in Dingle as well, and he just wanted to say, look, Congratulations on your minor All-Ireland. We're really, really delighted in Kerry that you've won it. But just remember, it's a minor All-Ireland. It's a minor All-Ireland. And your grade is in Kerry by winning Sam Maguire. So even for, like, we hadn't, and we'll touch on it after, we hadn't won an All-Ireland at minor level in 20 years, and there was pandemonium in the county. But Fitzmaurice was still kind of saying to these guys, look, it's great, we're delighted for you, but it's not the end goal. It's not the end goal. So winning a minor All-Ireland isn't the end goal in Kerry, obviously. It's senior success is what we're talking about, and that just breeds into the whole kind of, that aspect of it again.
So Michael's talking there about the new take on success, breeding success, but what about the direction of causality going the other way? What about the underage success? So if we look just at the numbers in terms of the underage from, and we'll take 1964 because that's when the under-21 competition came into play, and if we take it in terms of hurling, you can see Kilkenny are winning their fair share and more than their fair share of under-21 and minors. And if you take it in football for the same 51-year period, Kerry are doing pretty well in terms of underage, minor and under-21 All-Irelands as well. So lads, would it be a case that if you look after the minors and under-21s, the senior success will automatically follow? Or do you think there's something more to it?
A little bit more, Brian, yeah. Your first one?
Yeah. Well, if you just look at the stats, John, only 15 minors winners won the All-Ireland 3 years later. So a team that won a minor All-Ireland 3 years later didn't progress to under-21.
And obviously it's only 9 in football. So the idea is just that obviously it's not a linear kind of a thing, that if you win minor, you automatically under-21, you win senior. Obviously that's not the case, Brian, yeah?
And again, as you can read yourselves, lads, since 1995 within the stats, only 4 teams have won the under-21 All-Ireland 3 years after a minor hurling title.
And since 95, it's only 1 team in football. And Kerry have never, according to our reliable statistician, Kerry have never ever won an under-21 3 years after winning minor. So they have obviously won, guys like Mike Frank Russell has won minor under-21 and senior, but they haven't won it with the same group of players, so that they won a minor and then gone on 3 years later. Never happened. Never won a 21 3 years after winning a minor.
So the point we're making is that success is not linear. It's not just minor 21 3 years later, that it's about putting in the work, it's about doing all the stuff, and the success will follow. It's not as if Kerry and Kilkenny didn't win any minor and under-21s. It's just not the case that the team that won it at minor won it at 21 3 years later.
Well, that you did. You know, teams aren't supposed to win All-Irelands when they're so supposedly in transition.
Yeah, look, the transition talk, I think Joe Bradley told us the production line was finished in Kerry. Well, Joe Bradley, what do you think of that?
Yeah, so Donny did that interview obviously very close after the final whistle when the blood was still rushing a little bit quick around his head, but we don't have the article, and this has nothing to do with Joe Brawley, you know, as much as I'd like it to be. It's not about Joe Brawley, but there was an article that I had pictured, but it was, the article title was "The production line in Kerry grinds to the production line grinds to a halt in Kerry football factory," and again, not about Joe Brawley, but that article was systematic of every article that was written around the time, every radio phone-in program. You know, Wishy Fogarty blowing in our own county. The phone lines were buzzing up about, you know, people were not going to win an All-Ireland for the next 100 years. Kerry wants, we were so bad we won't even be allowed to watch Croke Park on television. We were so bad. It was gone crazy, the amount of negativity that was coming around the place, and it was all based on misconceptions. And Joe's article, and that's why Donaghy lost the plot. It was all based on misconceptions, and the misconceptions are, and this is probably the crux of what we're talking about, is that you can have success at senior level without winning minors. You can have success at senior level by winning minors. But the key to it is that the winning is a byproduct of good development, that it's not the end goal. So that if you're focusing on, and John will talk about the Forrestal competition in a minute, if your end goal is that we're going to win the under-14 or the under-16 county championship, the likelihood is you're going to have a less of a chance of winning at senior level, if the end goal at under-14 is to win a championship. So in terms of, you can jump on, in terms of our our under 21s, just for another example, in 2011 were hammered by 22 points by Cork, and they were again seen as you know, at the time physically they weren't as developed as they are now, but they were seen at the time as, you know, one of the worst under 21 teams that ever came out of the county. You know, and we've out of that, guys I just listed those, between the semi-final and final this year, is it 11 or 9? 9 of those guys played on the field in the semi-final or final. The same team that were beaten by 22 points by Cork in a Munster final in 2011. 3 years later, there was a couple of All-Stars in Footballer of the Year. James O'Donoghue was on that team. And a couple other guys. So just the real point is, and this is the thing that's it's there. It's not unique to the GAA. This is in every sport in every part of the world. That the emphasis as a youth coach is that we need to win, because if we don't bait the winning into them at this age, it's not going to be there when they're seniors. That's science tells us, everything tells us that's not the case. That is really far from the case. Winning is great if it comes as a result of really good development, of working on all our stuff that we've been talking about, the bilateral coordination, the skills, the games-based coaching, all that kind of stuff. If we win after that, that's just the cherry on top. But if we're hammering, if we're leaving guys who are you know, maybe skillful guys, but they're not as big as that character, we'll play the big fella. And maybe we're stifling these guys a little bit. So it's about developing the player first and winning obviously as a byproduct of that. So just that's all. So in that 20 years, in the 20 years of hysteria in Kerry where we hadn't won a minor, we made 11 senior All-Ireland final appearances and won 7. So that just illustrates the point that although you're not winning, if you're not winning those titles, you can still be a very successful underage coach by getting players through to the next level. So although we weren't winning minor titles, we were still getting players through all the time that were really good. I mean, guys like Paul Murphy. You know, Paul Murphy is a guy, like I was talking about eating chicken breasts and eggs, and Paul Murphy is about 5'2", 6 stone, soaking wet. Never played Kerry minor, and he was man of the match in the All-Ireland final, and he'd probably be a cornerback for Kerry for the next 20, as long as he wants the jersey, or halfback, wherever he was. So just because we don't have that winning at minor level, or 16s or 14s, doesn't mean you're not going to obviously have success at senior level. Yeah.
So just to follow on from that point, ultimately as coaches then for 2015, if we can take it that everybody here decides that okay, we're going to try and win every game we go to play, because that's ultimately what we are as coaches, we want to win. But we're also trying to develop our players. Develop them so they'll continue to be better footballers and hurlers next year. That they'll be playing for our clubs, that they'll be playing for our schools, and that they'll be playing for our squads. But this is interesting to follow on Micheál's point. In 2000, that's the Kilkenny minor team. Kilkenny had won the previous 9 Leinster minor titles in a row, and this 2000 team were defeated by Offaly in a Leinster semi-final down in Dr. Cullen Park, okay? And John, if you just flick on, out of that team, if you can recognise the faces, I'll call them out in a second anyway. 9 of those players went on to win senior All-Ireland medals. 9 of the players. And probably 4 or 5 of them the best hurlers of all time. Over 39, 40 All-Ireland medals. So that was a team that wasn't successful at minor level. But that didn't deter those players for driving on and driving on and driving on. But they were driven on by the environment. Okay, John? Now, we fast forward a couple of years later, we have a double minor All-Ireland winning teams, 2002 and 2003. Okay? So we're not saying winning is a dirty word, because ultimately out of that bunch of players, 9 players again went on to win senior All-Ireland medals. So there's a contrast there, isn't there? We have a team that was perceived as unsuccessful, providing 9 players long-term for their club and county, and now we have a team of winners at minor level who could continue to take that and be strong leaders in their clubs and for the county again.
Now again, we're pointing out this is not linear, because that 2000 Kilkenny minor team had actually got to the final of the Tony Forrestal tournament. Now the Tony Forrestal tournament, for those of you who don't know it, I said as very few do not know it, is an under 14 All-Ireland tournament that takes place in Waterford to honour Tony Forrestal. And that Kilkenny minor team that lost in 2000, that grouping, now obviously not the exact same set of players, but that grouping, they were doing something right in Kilkenny around those times, because that grouping had actually got to the final. They didn't win it, but they competed, they got to a final. So the Tony Forrestal tournament is in operation since 1982.
Yep, and just another stat, no winner of the Forrestal since 1982, as far as we know, went on to win minor 4 years later. So what's the message there for us as coaches? We'll talk about squads in a minute.
Now that's a staggering result, because you think on the odds of chance alone, some county who would have won it 4 years earlier would have won a minor All-Ireland. So since 1982 that has not happened. Now, however, it's still the same counties, and I got Cork in here against the wishes of the lads. It's still the same counties that are actually winning those titles. So it's about a culture. It's about, you know, what you're trying to do, you know, and there's other factors as well in terms of county size and tradition and all of that. But the path to success is not linear. It's not just about winning the under-14, but it's important to get them exposure to that. And this follows on what Pat has been saying for years about introducing them to that will. Like at the end, it's compete to win, but you have to get them ready in stages. So the Forrestal tournament is very important, as is the Tipperary under-16, the co-op, which was known in my time, tournament. And again, what you see is that a bit more now. We get a bit more of the follow-through. So we have a number of teams who did win under-16 and went on a couple of years later to win minor. So we have some follow-through. And the so-called weaker or non-traditional counties, when they won the 16, they didn't get the follow-through. Okay? So again, we keep emphasising winning is not a bad thing in itself, as long as it's the outcrop of development, player development and so forth.
So just looking at the squads, and again, Kilkenny set up the squads around 1996 by forward-thinking administrators again, but they looked at the overall picture. Because, as I said previous, we're just very fortunate in Kilkenny that the post-primary schools are so strong, so we could call our post-primary schools our squads also. So if you look at the idea of Micheál talking about spreading the net as wide as possible, at under 14, every one of our clubs can send 3 of their young players into the squad setup, and they're catered for. Okay? So under 14, there's no selection. It's basically the club sits down and decide we'll send in 3 of our players. Okay? Under 15, obviously it's narrowed a bit, 2 regional squads. Under 16, regional squads again. And under 17, 1 regional squad. But just to let you know, from our perspective, because it fits the Kilkenny model, and again, this is the administrators not only doing their day job, but looking forward ahead, they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to start in April, okay, to let the secondary schools, post-primary schools have their time. We're going to continue right through the summer, but it's going to complement the school club activity. So this is really the kernel of the squad system within Kilkenny. And again, Brendan O'Sullivan should be up here talking about this, Pat Henderson, Ned Quinn, all those people. And I want you to read that yourselves. Okay, develop the player in all various aspects of the game. Again, Micheál mentioned strength and conditioning. Kilkenny decided not to rush into it. We are getting into it now, but it's in a slow, gradual process with people who know what it's about, because we want them better hurlers and footballers. We want to have a better player going back to the club, okay? Because if they go back to the club better, that'll raise the standards in the club. Expose the player to various coaching styles, because the wise men that they were, they rang and wrote out letters to ex-inter-county hurlers who would have massive respect within the county. So a kid, if he comes through the squad system at 14, 15, 16, 17, is exposed to various coaching styles. And you think about it from a club perspective. If a club can have 3 kids in it under 14, if a club can have 3 kids in it under 15 and 3 at under 16, manage to get 1 into the 17 squad, manage to get 1 into the minor squad, that potentially, if the club, and we're doing our job properly, could be the future of your club team. And it's ultimately to prepare the player for next stage of development. Now, I'd also, before John moves on, we don't have the word win in that slide. Would you agree on that? But we certainly don't have the word lose in the slide either. Okay? So we have to be as competitive as we possibly can. And again, this is what the squad system is set up for, ultimately to get a Fenian man up there holding the Liam McCarthy Cup. Okay? That's the ultimate goal. And we have a great image we use in coaching in games. We've used it for over 20 years now. It's of a young hurler at 6, a young hurler at 14, a young hurler at 20, and a young hurler wearing a Kilkenny jersey at the end. And I think that picture paints 1,000 words for the coaches, because now they just don't see they're working with this particular team at this particular time. They're doing it for the greater good, that eventually maybe somebody will follow through.
Just on that one, the same with the squads and the academies in Kerry. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal. But I suppose when the lads started the squads in Kerry, the idea was that we were going to basically improve the whole standard of the players to go back to their clubs. So whether they actually went on to win minor, under 21 or senior, if they did, that was great. If not, we were sending better players back to each other, back to the club, so that we were raising the standard of the game at junior, intermediate, and senior club level as well. That was a kind of a wider goal of that, I suppose. Yeah. So I won't go through all of these because I know we're pressed for time. But just in the States, you've probably heard of the 10,000-hour rule. This is just about specialization from an early age. So we're talking about using the squads from under 14. And I was talking about sampling earlier. Specialization is something I have there not desirable. It's really counterproductive. If you have a kid at 8 or 10 or 12, and we'll say, look, your father played cornerback, so you're going to play cornerback for the next 30 years. You don't leave that position. You don't leave that sport. You don't do anything else. You're working the same system, same musculoskeletal system all the time from the same age. You're more likely to pick up injuries. You're less likely to have that kind of sustained success if you're talking about specializing from a very early age. Now, specializing isn't, it's not something that really we want to do from anything younger than maybe 14, 15 years of age. Yeah.
It's important to point out, lads, that early specialisation is not about starting early. Because we look on hurling that a young kid having a hurl in his hand, I mean, that's not specialisation, that's a kid loving getting out the backyard and have a few pucks. That's what we want. We want kids. So it's not early specialisation as opposed to starting early. Starting early is good, but it's not in a hotbed of squad systems, whatever.
Just the guys down the end there, just the Jordan, Tomas Leary, Keith Wood, Donaghy, Sherlock, all those guys, Dara Joyce, Kilkenny, the boys wanted to put up Dara Joyce going playing Aussie rules or something. All of those guys are products. They're top of their field in a lot of their games, and they're guys who would have played multiple sports as young kids. So I think we've probably gone past it. A lot of there was a study there from the NCAA in collegiate sports in America where I think it was it 88% or 80? Yeah, you can go on to the next one. Yeah, 88%. You want the next one, John? Yeah.
That's the other one.
Back one, yeah.
No
Back one more. There you go. 88% of collegiate athletes in the States participated in more than one sport as a child. So just in terms, again, maybe going back to our own squads and stuff, we're not telling them they cannot play other sports. It's okay to play other sports once we're the flavour they want to come back to, I suppose. Yeah. Youth sport often claims to respond to the needs and wishes of our children. Far too often, however, it exists to satisfy our needs, adults. Even more than their peers, children involved in competitive sport grow up in a world dominated by adults with little space for freedom, self-initiative and creativity. Yeah, okay.
Now, we've made the emphasis at a number of stages that this happens within a culture, within an organisation. And the quote there from Liam Griffin, if there was a transfer market in the GA, the one man I would want is Ned Quinn. This is Ned Quinn being the chairman of the Kilkenny County Board. So that it's you're part of an organisation as a coach. Obviously, your target is to win the next game. And, what we're there to do is meet all of these requirements for the clubs. So I see the red light on here, so I'll move on. Summary, what we're saying is, look, development is not linear. It's about helping the players as individuals and moving them on so that they can become better adults, better contributors to the club and so forth. And early specialisation and how that has been defined is counterproductive. And what we're saying here is we've kind of now come to the acceptance that you don't overload kids physically, okay? And what we're making the point is that you don't overload them mentally either. You don't put too much pressure on them psychologically, that it's all about winning. It's about competing, it's about trying to be successful, but it's not necessarily all about winning, and just because you don't win doesn't mean you're not being successful.
That's not one of my kids either, by the way. That's a wrap.
Thank you very much.